Well, welcome everybody to our webinar today, Establishing the Foundation of Your Security in the New Normal. Today we have with us Mr. Larry Reed of ZKTeco USA. Larry is a 15+ year veteran in the biometrics industry, and he's currently the CEO of ZKTeco USA, where he presides over several business units, including door access control, entrance control, time and attendance, and biometrics and AI. Mr. Reed has specific application expertise in the fields of physical access control and time attendance, and has helped well over 100 enterprise and MB businesses integrate a variety of biometric devices with their respective application software. He is an active member in SIA, PSA, ESA, and the Thailand Smart Security Association. Mr. Reed is also a New Jersey certified CEU course instructor and a BICSI instructor who often teaches business and technical classes related to biometrics and artificial intelligence at numerous security conferences. Today's customers need to know the whereabouts of both their employees and visitors. But why pay for security guards and receptionists when there now exists touchless, unattended visitor management and access control systems? These devices can check for valid appointments and identification, confirm health check questionnaires is completed, scan for body temperature and face mask compliance, and then unlock doors, gates accordingly. These systems are surprisingly affordable and simple to install if you do your homework. Today's webinar will review how this new touchless technology works and its best practices. My name is Julie Rolls. I am the training manager at PSA, and I will be moderating our call today. I have just a few quick housekeeping items before I hand it over to Mr. Larry Reed. First, if you've not already done so, please mute yourself. If you happen to have any questions throughout the course of this presentation, please type them into the chat panel and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. I will also be monitoring that chat should you run into any technical difficulties. I'll do my very best to get you back up and running. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Larry Reed. Welcome, Larry.
Oh, thank you, Julie. So nice being with you again, presenting.
Nice.
We have a lot of information and very little time, so I'd just like to remind everyone, please make sure that you have a hold of Julie's contact information or my own, and if you have any questions or opportunities, we'd be more than happy to discuss them offline. Because of all the information, my New York accent may kick in, and I may have a tendency to speak a little fast, so please do make note of anything that you find of interest. I hope we have time at the end of the presentation to address your questions live, but certainly we can discuss them offline. I'd like to emphasize we're going to be reviewing a lot of technology, but it really all comes down to how do we help our business owners reopen, and that's why there's going to be a lot of technology. I'm sorry. There's going to be a lot of technology we're reviewing, and if everyone could just bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to kill all my my telecommunications devices.
Murphy's Law, right?
Yeah, and everyone held off. So yeah, so I'd just like to emphasize we're going to be discussing a lot of technology, but really what it comes down to is how do we help our clients reopen? And that's the point of all of this technology. You could use it all collectively in an integrated format, or you could just purchase any one particular technology that we'll be discussing. So let's kick this thing off.
Go ahead and switch the display settings in your presentation.
Thank you.
Yep.
There we go.
Thanks.
Yeah. So as Julie pointed out, we're going to be discussing what is the new norm, and here are some of the technologies we're going to be addressing, how body temperature screening pertains to helping businesses reopen, why you should be implementing visitor management. Customers invest so much money making sure that they're restricting access to those who are familiar to them, including their employees, but what about all the visitors? Also now in the news is occupancy control. Of course, the downside of occupancy control is you don't want rioting going on in retail stores, but also occupancy control provides tremendous intelligence so that business proprietors, they know how to staff their offices, how to inventory their offices. So this is all part of their operations costs and how to reduce that by having information derived from occupancy control systems. Also, every single time I go to one of these retail trade shows where technology is being reviewed, I ask all these chief operations officers, technology officers, what technology interests you the most? And it's not a surprise and it's kind of sad, but they all want to reduce labor because labor is so expensive in the US, Canada, and other Western countries. So a lot of this technology is actually now unmanned, which can save you the expense of having to pay someone to either stand guard or even manually scan someone with a handheld body temperature thermometer. I'm also going to discuss some of the workflows of this technology and a little bit more details on how the technology works, and of course, best practices. In the news, of course, sensationalism spreads very quickly, and unfortunately, failure is much more interesting than success. And being in biometric industry for 15 years and now in the temperature detection industry for 18 months, I could tell you most of the technology all works fantastic, provided it's installed properly and that the people who are operating it are trained. So usually it's just a matter of best practices where we don't find better results. And again, you can imagine everything on the news is bad news or you wouldn't be watching it. So we want to make sure that best practices are available to anyone who's implementing either biometrics or any type of body temperature screening technology. I will also touch upon privacy concerns, which is valid because of people's concern about the government using face recognition without people's awareness. And that's really where the issue lies. Face recognition, though, is very popular in time and attendance access control, where people are voluntarily submitting their biometric credentials. And that's okay, but there's a lot of confusion. So let's go through this, and hopefully we'll be able to cover most of this before the presentation concludes. So prior to COVID-19, we're all familiar with the primary cores of technology: fire suppression, access control, intrusion, surveillance. Of course, this is our bread and butter. This is foremost on the minds of many operations directors that wish to be compliant. They don't want to be fined. So this is where their focus has been and still is. However, what's the point of all these different technologies if you can't reopen your business? So even though these things are still, of course, prevalent, it's now today all about how do we reopen the schools, how do we reopen the business, and that, of course, comes down to reinstilling confidence. The government needs to be confident that they've allowed business to reopen, that there won't be additional waves of COVID-19 or any other infectious diseases. Your employees want to have the confidence that if they return to work, they're not going to be exposed to anyone sick. And of course, your customers won't resume their shopping and leisure activities unless they also know that the business owner is taking great care in ensuring the health and safety of all their visitors. And that's why it comes down to body temperature. This has all been in the news, like I mentioned, most of last year, but this really is probably the best way to find out if someone is sick. It's not 100% foolproof. However, usually an elevated body temperature is usually an indication that you have some type of infectious disease. And that's why if you travel overseas anywhere the past 20 years, the first thing that happens to you when you get to the airport is usually an individual will approach you with a handheld scanner and measure your temperature to see if it's elevated. Now, again, this is not assuring that you're sick, that you're infectious, but it is a telltale sign that it's more probable that you might have an illness and therefore you require additional screening. This is no different than a sobriety test. If a police officer at night sees a motorist at 2 o'clock in the morning swerving in the middle of the road, now there's no guarantee that motorist is drunk. That person is not arrested on the spot. However, the officer will pull them aside and do additional screening. And that's the purpose of this body temperature detection. It's not to lock somebody up and call the ambulance and haul them off. No, this is just a means to allow someone to identify someone who's more likely of having an illness and then checking them out accordingly. And that's really what it's used for. Now, the next thing we also want to talk about is visitor management. Visitor management is key because what's the point of restricting access to the employees if you don't know where your visitors are going? And many times visitors today, sometimes businesses still use a paper logbook to record visitors. and they trust the visitor to show their credential, whether it's a driver's license, and the security guard assumes that it's valid ID, but how do you really know? So you want to take a closer look at visitor management technology. And because of what I just mentioned, the visitor management market is now really taking off in conjunction with access control. It's a really nice complement. And again, if you're thinking about doing access control for your own employees but not visitors, you're really missing something. So you really want to look at visitor management. As I mentioned before earlier, occupancy control now is also extremely important. You know, not only do you want to prevent overcrowding so that no one becomes injured, but now with social distancing, you now have the ability to determine how many people are allowed in a room. And then instead of paying a person with a clicker to people count, there's now technology that could simply monitor how many people have entered, how many people have exited, and be able to do the math and tell you at any given time what occupancy level exists in that room. So not just for personal safety and preventing riots, but also to ensure that you don't have too many people in the room that might be in close proximity to one another and increase the likelihood of them spreading an infectious disease such as COVID. This is a photo, interesting enough, from last year. Everyone knows, Black Fridays are crazy, and unfortunately, there's a lot of injuries and some fatalities when allowing people just to run wild in retail stores. So this is just to make a point. So this has now become very familiar. Now when we go grocery food shopping, lines out the door because someone now is manually counting people and then trying to restrict entry into the store. So now we see a backup of lines. So now that the business owner is showing health precautions, unfortunately they're suffering from the business side. So you want to get people into your store, into your business as quickly as possible, while also safely. This, of course, also exists at airports. Everyone, wants to get on their flight and not miss their flight, but you need to make sure everyone is safe. So that's why we have X-ray screenings and metal detection screening. So you want to, maximize throughput while at the same time having a level of safety and security. So let's now focus a little bit more now on people counting and occupancy control. So today, there exists technology where you're combining surveillance cameras and having software doing analytics, and that can be very expensive, especially if it's recurring. So we suggest instead having an embedded device that can recognize people, check for body temperature, and also do people counting. Now, in addition to people counting, if you connect it with your access control, you can actually deny anyone access once the room occupancy has been over-exceeded. So now you're eliminating a people counter, you're ensuring room occupancy levels are maintained by unmanned access control. A lot of people haven't heard about this before. They think the quick fix is just to pay a people counter, but where's the accountability? You have the expense. So this technology does exist, and it is prevalent on end users' minds. So just a quick review: why occupancy control? You want to prevent overcrowding, of course, as I just mentioned. You want to, for the riots, but you can also improve efficiency and profitability by knowing exactly when are people in the store. This way, you could, you can hire correct levels of staff. You could also have correct levels of inventory. You could also determine the best way to control energy. So occupancy control, people counting, can actually help end users improve efficiency and profitability. And of course, this results in saving money. And once it's all electronic, you now have far better accountability than if you had someone just manually writing down things on a piece of paper. So how does it work? You have a recognition device or a people counting device that's actually connected with your counter, with your turnstile. And now as people enter the room, the device will, through either face recognition or even motion sensors now, can actually begin counting who's coming in. But you also have a device that's counting while people are going out. So now you've got two devices, one counting in, one counting out. There's software in the back end that can do the math to figure out what is the current occupancy. And then if you want, you can control it to a turnstile or a gate and actually prevent anyone from entering the room. Make it very simple. On our particular device, green means that you're in a go situation. So you'll see a check mark, and we actually give you a percentage of occupancy, and you can see that actually count down. Once you've exceeded, you've hit 100%, the device will turn red, and if it's connected to a turnstile, you can actually lock it down until the occupancy level drops low enough where people are allowed in the room again. So a very nice, simple way to maintain occupancy in any particular room. And of course, the device can be connected to a turnstile or gate. You could also have it connected to alarms, trigger a video camera, or get email notifications. So you're going to see occupancy control now, visitor management are now growing in popularity, also based on trying to maintain a healthy environment. Let's have a look now at visitor management. So here we have a video demonstrating our face recognition visitor management kiosk. Visitors will receive a QR code sent to their phone, and that QR code validates both their identification as well as their scheduled appointments. Here is the host who's now sending an invitation to their guest. Here you can see the QR code being displayed to the kiosk, and then the kiosk can optionally measure their skin temperature as well as if they're wearing a mask. So after the kiosk validates their identity, their appointment, and that they don't have an elevated body temperature, a QR code can be printed out by the kiosk. So that's just an example how you can have an unmanned lobby with a kiosk, whether you use a kiosk with a large 13-inch screen display, or if you're very popular now is a much smaller 8-inch display on a pole. So it all depends upon the application, how much user interaction you wish to have. But this is just becoming a more popular way to control visitors visiting your facility while not having to pay someone to greet them. And you can have a variety of different health screen checks on the display at ZK, or I'm sure other integrators can modify to your purposes. Here's just an example of a few of them. And typical questions, I'm sure you've seen these before. Have you experienced any COVID-related symptoms? Have you been exposed to anyone having COVID, and so on? So visitor management, a key component now of helping businesses reopen and not having the expense of having to pay someone. Here are some of the features. Very, very secure communication. You can create visitor passes from the kiosk. You can host the software or run it on premise. QR codes are becoming very, very popular. They're already popular overseas. Here in the US, you'll see QR codes in many, many restaurants where they don't want you touching the menus. And of course, you've got different tablet or kiosk options. You can have a large stand-up kiosk with a 13-inch screen display if you have a lot of questions and interaction going on, or you can have a small kiosk. Notifications via SMS or email, and you can have people either walk in or you can have them scheduled ahead of time. With a walk-in visitor, they haven't been invited prior, so all you need to do is have the visitor show up at the kiosk. They use their phone to scan a QR code. The QR code then prompts the user to enter a couple of health-related questions, and if they answer so that negative to all the questions, they then get a QR code. That QR code then is presented back to the kiosk, validating who the person is, their appointment. Optionally, they can have their temperature checked again if they're wearing a mask. And then the kiosk can print out a QR code, which can then be used to access a gate or a turnstile. So that's an example of visitor management for walk-ins. And then as you saw in the video, another scenario is if they're invited by their host, where the host accesses their computer or phone, creates an invitation. A QR code is then sent to the guest. And then again, the guest approaches the kiosk, shows their QR code, has their temperature checked, their mask checked. A QR code can be printed, and then the person can gain access to the gate or the turnstile. So visitor management with a QR code is really the way you want to go. It's far more secure than just relying on a visitor showing you their driver's license. And of course, with any software, you want to have reports and so on. So whenever you implement visitor management, it's really a win-win-win. I mean, the building managers, of course, they're improving their own security, and now they can actually track visitors wherever they are in the building. And for the tenants and the employees, they now have the peace of mind knowing that anyone visiting their facility, whether it's an office building or if it's a residential area, they know that everyone has gone through these checks. And of course, with visitors, now the process time is much, much faster. So there are no long lines. Now, visitor management has now become automated. So it's really a win-win-win. I know there's a lot of technology here, but again, I want to ensure the audience, this all exists, it's affordable, and we make it very, very simple to implement. So visitor management also in combination with access control.
A manned lobby can consist of putting your people at risk.
Here we have someone approaching the building.
Introducing our lobby.
And now we have a turnstile, or any turnstile here restricting access, controlled now by an access control reader that's also optionally measuring body temperature and if they're wearing a face mask.
First, users have posted the Face Plus device will verify security with face recognition technology, eliminating the need for an ID card. The device will skin temperature, an acceptable range.
Now, in addition to having a turnstile allowing someone to access your facility, you can also have metal detectors and also body temperature detection. So I want to keep everyone in mind now, all this technology exists not just to restrict access, but really reinstill confidence for the returning employees, as well as, of course, customers. And typically, any turnstile can be utilized. ZK manufactures their own turnstiles, but most all turnstiles are now able to be retrofitted with various different access control devices. Typically, it's a card reader, but now those card readers can either be swiped out for a body temperature reader or biometric reader, or you can actually use these in connection with a card reader. You can put a body temperature or face recognition reader on a pole, wire it to the card reader on the turnstile, and now you've added enhanced security and enhanced health screening in addition to that card access system that's connected to the turnstile. Having a closer look at the body temperature readers, you see many of these on the market. I'd like to mention that they're really only less than a handful of manufacturers. ZKTeco is one of them. The vast majority of suppliers are reselling someone else's solution, but they'll pretty much work the same. The less expensive devices have a thermopile sensor, which is excellent in a room-controlled, temperature-controlled environment where you don't have temperature swings and also you don't have drafts. However, if you need to install a body temperature reader where there is varying room temperature changes, or if there's drafts by an exterior door, you're going to want to use a device that has a thermographic camera instead. There's a comparison between the two. With a thermopile sensor, you may actually have to change or provide a correction, a temperature correction deviation setting if you're going to have swings in temperature from very, very hot summer days to very cold summer days. If that's your concern, you should always opt for a device that has a thermographic imaging camera because there is no need to self-calibrate. These devices are far more accurate. And with the device, you're always going to want to have software because the software provides you the monitoring and the reporting and the alerting whenever anyone is detected having elevated body temperature. And in the case of ZKTeco, we've got very granular reporting for both registered users, unregistered users, what device they tried to access, what their temperature was, and so on. So very, very granular data. Now, I wanted to emphasize the devices themselves are fantastic when they're installed properly, but that's why you really want to follow installation tips. And this really is what ensures that you'll have a very, very positive experience. Just a few that people don't aware, if you're going to be using these devices for face recognition, you always want to have someone enrolled with their face while they're not wearing a mask. And then afterwards, the system can recognize their face while wearing the mask. And if anyone has any concerns for face privacy, the ZKTeco device can also read palm. So that's a touchless, totally touchless experience and highly, highly accurate. As mentioned before, these devices work best in temperature-controlled rooms. So if you're putting them near your exterior door, revolving door, you're probably not going to get the best results. So before you install any of these devices, you definitely want to get a hold of the manufacturer and review best practices and installation tips. People sometimes have concerns for privacy. Very important to note, these devices do not store faces nor match faces. These are biometric templates. The faces are converted into a biometric template just like fingerprint readers. And the only reason why faces might be stored is if you want some type of visual feedback to know that you've been recognized. But certainly you do not need to store faces. And with ZKTeco, all the data is stored on the customer's network, not in the cloud. So you should never have any privacy concerns, at least not with ZKTeco, because we are not a cloud solution. Your end user has complete control of all their data, and there are no faces stored on the device, only biometric templates. We have a lot of documentation to support this. So if any of you have an opportunity where your end user client has some concerns, we're more than happy to share this information with you. So why touchless visitor management and access control? As mentioned, you want to combine visitor management and access control. The two now go hand in hand because you want to account for your employees as well as any visitors. And of course now with health concerns, you want to integrate as much health screening technology as possible, whether it's body temperature readers, mass detection readers, and of course you want the ability to display health screen questionnaires to really make sure that everyone is mindful now of having good practices. People should know before they leave their home, if they're feeling ill, they will be checked at the office or school. And typically people may be concerned that they don't want to get in trouble for missing a day from work. They don't want to lose a vacation day, a sick day. Maybe a student doesn't want to miss out on taking an exam. Well, if people are now more mindful that they're going to be spot checked before entering, you won't have sick people going to work and school, and hopefully just the mindset will improve the health and safety standards, and people, you'll see COVID curves now diminishing and no follow-up waves because we're now, as a deterrent now, people know the technology is in place. So I apologize for speaking so quickly. I just wanted to give you a highlight of the kind of technology that's available to you. All of it can be integrated, or perhaps you just want to piecemeal it together, whatever makes most sense for you. But the number one reason you want to do this is to help bring businesses back and reinstill confidence in the government, employees, and visitors. So, Julie, I know we're almost down to the wire. Any last-minute questions in the next minute and a half or so?
Yeah, we did have a couple questions come through, and this is a lot of great information. It looks like ZK has been very busy this past year for technology developments. This is great. The first question I had was, can PSA members that bought the SpeedFace technology in 2020 use the SF1008 readers with the customer counting or entrance control for existing turnstile applications?
Yeah, Julie, that's a great question. And the one word I neglected to mention is we make a point of future proofing all our technology, because we were prepared a year ago that we had no idea how long this is going to become the norm. And we don't want customers having to throw away these devices. In some cases, they could be rather expensive. So yes, any technology that you have right now can be upgraded and integrated with all the technology that you saw here, whether it's visitor management or the turnstiles. It's all can be upgraded and work with all that technology. So just get a hold of of us here at the office, and we'll be glad to walk you through it.
Great. Another question here. This is a good question. Is there a reader that integrates into elevators that can read QR codes?
Yeah, it's not that the reader itself doesn't control the elevator. It's the access control panel, and in most cases, all panels can take Wiegand input or even OSTP input. So now it's just a matter of just deciding what reader you want to work with. So we at ZK, we specifically have a 10 relay elevator controller that's expandable to 58, And with that, you could use our biometric readers, our QR code readers, QR code readers will work with any software that can generate a QR code. So it's really not just a ZK solution. Third-party solutions do exist that will accept QR codes, but certainly reach out to ZK because we have that available.
Excellent. One more question before we conclude today is, has ZK added support resources to keep up with the 2020 demand and these new applications that you shared today?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The demand necessitates us. So we've not only increased our technical support staff, we now also have sales engineers in each one of those particular vertical fields I just described. So we've got the sales engineers, we've got tech support, and if anyone hasn't called into our office in a while, we also now have on staff an inside sales staff as well to help everybody with pre-sales questions. So we've pretty much doubled our staff since we've arrived here in Atlanta 18 months ago.
This is awesome. It's been very informative. And I also know that ZK has a couple of sessions at Tech, so come check them out at PSA Tech as well. That looks like all the questions for today. If anyone would like to review this presentation again or pass it along, we will have a recorded version of it posted very soon on psaeducation.com. Thank you very much to Larry Reed and the entire ZKTeco team. Their contact information is posted here if you have more questions after today's presentation. Please visit our website, that's psaeducation.com, to be sure that you're leveraging all that PSA has to offer. On our education page, you can access our future webinar events, this recording, our educational offerings, and our business solution providers. This will conclude our presentation for today. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.